In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzy Hayness, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Dustin Melbardis, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Bryan Frye. Say hello.
Good evening, all. I hope you all are doing quite well tonight.
And a good evening to you. I'm doing really well as I get to relax and talk movies. And also joining me is Lizzy Hayness.
Yes, hello. Kids are sleeping. It's a calm night in the Haines household, ready to talk about movies.
It's a calm.
Knock on wood, quit.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, no.
My husband's here just in case things are crazy.
Mommy.
That's happened. I have had to stop a recording halfway in between and be like, I have to go upstairs. My kids are crying.
Oh, the best. If you're a long listening fan of our show is try to pick out the fun episodes where you've got Russell's little man playing the drum kit in the back. That's a really good one. Because, hey, he's pretty good. He's a young kid, but he's really good. That's right, audience. It's all three of us because it's a dealer's choice episode. It is my dealer's choice. It's time for me to pull into my movies and say, guys, is this good? I can't wait for us to get to that answer. But before we get to our movie, we're going to go over our usual little icebreaker questions. Hey, Lizzy, what's a real movie filming location that made an impression on you and that you crave to visit someday?
Okay, so I don't know if this counts, but I really, really want to visit New Zealand after watching The Lord of the Rings. I don't know if technically that counts since they're supposed to be in a different world, but just the fact that they were able to film and they're not in a set, they're really, you're seeing like real greenery and just like this lush mountains. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's always made me want to explore there.
Yeah, it's the mountaintop scenes for me. Being from the mountains and then seeing those mountains.
Yes.
It counts. It totally counts.
I think so too. I was like, it's real, so it's got to count.
Yeah, Bryan, what is your answer here for that filming location that you'd really love to visit?
Probably some of the locations for Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, I know some of them are completely fictitious, but they kind of play around with some of the like hanging spires and stuff in the Far East. And there's a lot of that where I'm just like, even if it doesn't look exactly like it did in the movie, like Man with a Golden Gun and stuff like that, like I think I'd still like to see it.
I love both of your answers because it actually, I always cheat with these questions. I love to just spew a bunch of stuff out there and see what sticks. My first answer was Rivendell, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
A bedroom.
You can revisit it in Lego form. It's only like $600, but you can build all of Rivendell.
Right.
I'm a Lego head. No, just like a bedroom filled with golden light where all my friends show up. That's heaven, right?
Right.
But it actually goes a lot with what you said there, Bryan. When you said the man with the golden gun, my real life location I'd want to go. If you're talking about on location, you're really drawn towards a Bond movie because they're so great for their on location shooting schedule. They go all over the world. So I think the first thing of all of them, the first one that came to my head was the Montenegro Hotel in Casino Royale.
Yeah.
The first
that's
Daniel
cool.
Craig. But there's something about the way that they're shot too, the beautiful blue water, the sand, the linen uniforms. Bond movies have a way of shooting it just so beautifully.
Right.
Okay, Lizzy, what's the last movie that you saw?
It's actually pretty serendipitous because before we started recording, Dustin, you and I were talking about Josh Hartnett and how we really enjoy him as an actor. And I saw Trap in theaters, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and starring Josh Hartnett.
Oh, okay. I'm excited about this. Josh Hartnett, his dad era. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Josh is my boy.
I saw a couple of interviews. I really like him as well. I saw a couple of interviews with him, and I have to admit, he seems very like just like humble, like just like a good guy, which only adds to the appeal for me when you just seem like salt of the earth. But the movie itself was very good. It was a little bit of a departure from normal, like M. Night Shyamalan's normal formula, I'll say, but it was very good. Like Aaron and I both had a really good time.
Okay.
I want to be the ugly best friend hanging out with Josh Hartnett, Rob Pattinson, and Ewan McGregor. like we're just a group of people that go out. I'll be the ugly friend. It's fine. It's fine. I love those guys. I would totally hang out with them and be the dude that earns like, look at the bald guy.
That'd be a fun group.
It's fine. It's fine. I bet
they're all really nice. I feel like they all seem pretty like Robert Pattinson might be like slightly awkward. He always kind of strikes me as like somebody that just like lives in his head a little too much. But
you gotta have that guy. You gotta have that guy.
You gotta have. Yeah,
I'm also not following him to like the second or third bar. Like I want to. I'm not following Robert Pattinson where he wants to go next.
That's right.
I'm doing it. Yeah. See, that's what I bring to the table because I think I could party. I think I could fill each of their friendship needs. Like, I think Ewan McGregor would be like, I'm not going to Rob's bar again. I'll be like, Rob, let's hit it.
Yeah, Rob is definitely the friend that makes bad choices. Like every friend group has that one like hot mess friend that is definitely Robert Pattinson.
You want to do some good times? Let's do good times, brother. Let's go.
What's the last movie you saw, Bryan?
Oh, gosh. Listen, this is probably going to be the only time I do this, but I got to unload. It's been 2 months, basically, since I've been on the podcast, and it's been a tumultuous 2 months, but I've seen some movies. I had one flight where I watched Equalizer, some kind of Downside of Bad or something. It was a military extraction movie on Netflix. But the one I saw in theaters most recently, this is the one I want to talk about and the one I want to tout is Twisters. I had so much fun at that movie. I left in a great mood. I downloaded the soundtrack immediately. I beat the heck out of the soundtrack immediately. Like, it just put me in a happy place because I saw the first movie when I lived in a happier place. Like, I was young and I was like, yeah, Chasing Storm seems like a completely plausible, job title. Let's do this. Let's chase some twisters, almost like that time where you almost convinced yourself that you could do Deadliest Catch. Like, yeah, I could do that. Do it. It's fine. So I love the first movie. This was highly anticipated ever since I saw the preview for it in the Super Bowl last year or this year. And it did not disappoint. I truly believe that there's a formula now for not necessarily rebooting, but making a sequel from a legacy movie. There have been too many good ones now. I think they've figured it out. So Twisters, Top Gun Maverick, Blade Runner 2049, like it is possible. It's attainable. There's a right way to do it. And they've done it in a variety of ways where you can both, you can include people from the past and make it work. You can kind of include people from the past and make it work, or you can include no one from the past and make it work. So there's a broad spectrum now. Let's start rebooting stuff.
The first three you said
stuff
were the first three I knew you would say. One, because they were you, and two, because they're the best answers right now. But I think it was 11 years ago, I think Mad Max Fury Road might have been the first of those formula. Hey, what if we do this back?
I'm contractually obligated to not mention Mad Max Fury Road in this house because my wife hated it so much. I brought Furiosa up to her and she was like, I'll kill you. I was like, this is nominated for like a lot of Oscars, right? And she goes, you constantly tell me how bad the Oscars are and how they're wrong all the time. And I'm like, touche, pussycat.
And she got you.
That's fair.
So I was like, can't argue with that. Fair enough.
Okay. The last movie I saw. Anybody remember Charlie Sheen starring in The Arrival from 1996?
Yes.
Alien conspiracy movie. Not great, but fun. I had fun watching it. I'm glad that it came across my little TV screen. Just kind of an interesting little offshoot. And I think Charlie Sheen sweats enough through it to be like, he's really pushing this. And I dug it. I thought it was pretty fun.
They made an Arrival too, just in case you want to jump down that rabbit hole. I bought the combo DVD, just so you know.
Awesome. And Bryan, what's our movie tonight?
Man, we are doing The Last Samurai. And let me tell you, this is a movie that I have looked forward to eventually covering. If it wasn't your dealer's choice, it would have ended up being one of mine sooner or later. This is a much maligned movie, and I really look forward to defending it.
And I think there are avenues to which it had been maligned, but from 2003, yes, I was excited to. I always put out a little, like, some feelers to the rest of the crew, like, what are we feeling? Are we going to do something like this? Are we going to do a early 2000s hip hop movie? Are we going to do another biopic, which apparently I pick all the time on accident? But The Last Samurai from 2003, one of my faves, something I grew up with, starring Tom Cruise, Timothy Spall, Ken Watanabe, and Billy Connolly. Budget of $140 million. 111 million box office domestically, that is US and Canada, 454 million worldwide. Placed 20th in the box office that year. just beating it was Spy Kids 3 Game Over, and just behind it was Freaky Friday. The number one movie that year, we talked about Rivendell, we talked about New Zealand, was The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. The Last Samurai, IMDb rating of 7.8. Our Rotten Tomato scores, not as high as I would have thought. The critics' tomato meter is at 66%, and the audience score is at 83%. Bryan mentioned that the movie was maligned. We'll get to that in a little bit. A couple of Oscar nominations. Best Supporting Actor for Ken Watanabe, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Sound Mixing. There were some other nominations at the Globes. Did win some satellite awards. Best Original Score from Hans Zimmer. Fun fact for y'all, this was Hans Zimmer's 100th movie score he had ever done.
Wow.
And so he won an award for this one. Best Cinematography for John Toll. Best Costume Design for Hila Dixon. And Best Editing, Victor Dubois and Steven Rosenblum. So this movie has some people that are into it, some organizations that are into it. I think it kind of fell into the also ran category with some of these other movies out that year. No AFI distinctions. Lizzy, we'll start with you. Had you ever seen The Last Samurai?
No, I'd never even heard of it before. I'm not going to lie. Wow. I had never even heard of it before. When this movie came out, I could not have been bothered to watch it. So this would have easily just been something that I would have skated over.
Hey, that's a win for Dustin. Like getting somebody on a first watch into this is
clean slate, yeah. clean slate. And when Aaron, my husband Aaron, had seen this, and he was really psyched when he found out that this was going to be a movie, because we typically like to watch these movies together that we're going to review for the podcast. And so he was super excited. Again, I'd never heard of it, so I immediately IMDb'd it. And when I tell you the visceral reaction that I had when I saw Tom Cruise on the cover in his armor, I was like, wait, this is a samurai movie with Tom Cruise? Like, what's happening? I'm very, very confused. Is this like, because this movie was made a while ago, I'm like, what's happening here? Is this some kind of like appropriation that's happening? Like, well, I'm very confused. Like, and I'm not quite sure why Tom Cruise is the main guy, but I want to say
talk about that after the break.
Yes, but I want to say here now that I promised myself I'd go in with really clean expectations. And I'm here to say that I really liked this movie a lot. Cool. I really, really liked this movie. I think this movie was quiet, a lot quieter than I had expected it to be because of the Tom Cruise element. But the meat of this movie really lies in so much that was unsaid, if that makes sense. It's just like a very quiet, very intimate movie, and I really, really, really enjoyed it a lot. And I'm thankful I got to watch it.
I would call this a contemplative movie. Like the amount of time that it gives you to sit and think about what they're actually trying to say and do is not only in itself a peaceful retelling of what the main character is going through, but like this is one of the few movies that allowed me to truly experience what a main character was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so powerful.
I could agree with that. Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it. Is it and I guess we got to give some credit to Zwick for for directing it in a way to where you are given the time and you can make that recognition for yourself that I am in the space to experience, and I have the time and I have the calm and I have the it's not a heavy action movie. Lizzy, I think your first expectation of looking it up on IMDb and seeing Tom Cruise in a samurai outfit would go, whoa. And we'll have to talk about it after the break. But I believe you actually captured a large amount of the court of public opinion is what are we doing with this? And we'll get into it a little bit later. Bryan, I know you had seen it before, but what were your expectations coming in this time?
Excitement, just truly excitement. I have wanted to defend this movie in the court of public opinion for so long based on, like, I have a couple movies like this, and I would put Master and Commander in the same bucket, where, you know, it wasn't necessarily that it was heavily maligned right off the bat, but it's not really, like, no one puts Master and Commander or this in the realm of Gladiator. And I would make an argument for it. And you never really get I mean, sure, you can, you know, have a couple beers among friends and have this discussion, but I can't wait to go on record for it, to like really be like, okay, did you get angry first and then watch this movie, and then as you watch it, you conformed the parts to your preconceived notion of it? Or did you actually read or listen to the subtext of this film, which is exactly the opposite of what 90% of the negative comments attack?
Agreed.
What a great way to approach watching any movie. Sometimes you have to say, sure, I'll give this Charlie Sheen alien movie a shot. And it's okay if you're...
I think you got what you paid for there, man.
Well, right. It's okay if your head kind of like drifts to your phone and like, well, what's going on over here? Oh, I mean, it's okay for a movie not to demand your attention. And
Sure.
Sometimes a movie demands your attention in its pace or its speed or its volume. But here, to say that it is contemplative in nature, I would agree. I have seen this movie 20 times. One of the things about this was I probably saw it 3 or 4 times from middle school to high school. But my late college career and my early graduate school career, I would have a practice of putting on a movie I knew well to where I could have it on and distract myself to watch something I really enjoy. And then to go back to whatever focus I needed to be focused on. And I suppose that worked for me to get my post-secondary degrees. Might not work for everybody, but Last Samurai was a study tool for me, just because it put me in a zone that I really liked being in, and coming back to it after several years. I was happy to visit it again. We have gone a little long in our intro, and I think we've got a lot to say. So we're going to take a little ad break. You're going to listen to a message from one of our sister shows. And when we come back, Bryan is going to give a plot summary for The Last Samurai. Now, this is 2 hours and 24 minutes of something you don't want spoiled for you. And I think you should listen after you have watched the movie. So we will see you on the other side.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we are back, and this is your final warning. that if you have not watched The Last Samurai from 2003, you need to stop this show and watch it right now, because it's time for Bryan to reveal the plot. Take it away.
Nathan Algren is a retired captain, late of the 7th Cavalry, an alcoholic and PTSD-riddled soldier that is doing speaking engagements with the Winchester Firearm Company, when an old sergeant friend of his comes calling for a job, a man's job. Sergeant Zeb introduces him to Mr. Omura, an ambassador to the country of Japan, or from the country of Japan, who wants warriors from America to come train their army to fight a current civil war against the ancestral samurai who are against the modernization of their country. Along with his hated superior, Colonel Bagley, they travel to Japan to train the army. Before much headway can be made, the samurai under the command of rebel Katsumoto attack a province where Omura's railroad is currently being built, spurring him and the colonel to order the novice army into battle. They fail miserably, and Algren is captured and Zeb is killed. In captivity, Algren is forced into sobriety and begins to learn what it means to be samurai. Learning the way of the sword from Katsumoto's Lieutenant Ujo, and how to be a civilized human being from the widow of a man he killed in battle, he learns another, more honorable way to live his life in the way of Bushido. When Omura's assassins fail in an attempt on Katsumoto's life, he and Algren find themselves on the same side of hating what modernization is bringing to the table and what it's doing to Japan. Katsumoto is allowed back to Tokyo to present his case before the emperor, and Algren is given the opportunity to lead the now veteran army against him. Omura succeeds in silencing Katsumoto in the council, and Algren kills his pursuers to help Katsumoto escape. Algren accompanies Katsumoto to his village, where he is determined to fight alongside the samurai to the death. They are pursued by the army, where a grand battle takes place, where the outnumbered samurai make the army pay so dearly for victory that the remaining soldiers kneel in honor of the fallen samurai. Algren, having survived yet again, presents the emperor with Katsumoto's sword, which speaks 1,000 words to the emperor, and he disgraces Omura and decides against the treaty with America, honoring his country's past.
That is quite the plot summary. And when you think about it, this movie could just be described. This is showing how the shogunate era, the Japanese samurai era, has come to an end. In the same way that you might say, this movie is about how Titanic, the ship, sinks. You could use a general term, but with that summary there, we realize there's a lot of ins and outs. There's a lot of relationships. There's a lot of time to sit and think about the decision-making that is happening with these people that we see. And it's hard for me not to immediately jump into the plot after a great summary like that. But I do want to get into what we kind of hinted at before the break, which was that this was a maligned movie for a bit. And I think we have to start with the title. Is this an example, Bryan, where the title might be responsible for confusing our audience a bit?
It is, especially since I'm sure Tom Cruise contractually had something in there that he's on the movie cover.
On the poster, yeah.
Yeah, I would actually argue that Ken Watanabe in this film is the last samurai, despite Algren's presence on the battlefield and having been the one that survives the film. I think that is something that's greatly missed in this film. And if you ever hear Watanabe or some of the others who have done interviews about this film, you'll hear something completely different from them and, cultural Japanese folks. Like, they don't view this as a slight against them in the least.
One of the things I'd piggyback off of that is that this movie was extraordinarily successful in Japan, which isn't always the case when you have it coming from sort of Western studio backing. But, Bryan, you said, like, I would probably say that it would be Watanabe's character or Katsumoto who would be the last samurai. You could stretch it out even further to say perhaps it is our Emperor Meiji who is being left with the remnants of the spirit of the last samurai, or you could think of it as the plural of the last samurai that matter to the history moving on in Japan. And I think that it's okay that we don't have an answer that's certain, as long as we know that the intention wasn't to be, this is white savior.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lizzy, is this something that you experienced? Wait, what is this I'm watching?
Yes, my first thought, like when I saw the poster, that's exactly what I thought. So I can really appreciate why people would see that. But Bryan, you said it really well in the beginning before we took our break, where it's like, and to be super clear before I say it, I never actually got angry. I just had questions, but I can appreciate why some people would be angry. And it's an important note to give of being like, if you are angry, like take a breath and like you should wipe your expectations clean before seeing a movie like this. And however, I mean, how long into the movie do we have before it's perfectly clear that we're talking about an American man who then is given a job in Japan, and like the puzzle pieces fit together to make sense for Tom Cruise's character. And I do believe, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I did see a quick blurb on social media about how apparently there was a French soldier who did fight with samurai at one point, and that this is like a very like loosely retelling of that story. So I think it's the puzzle pieces all track for the movie, and it's just one of those movies where I think, in all honesty, you just have to be able to watch it in order to realize that any of those tropes or stereotypes that potentially could be problematic, they're just not there.
Completely agree. This was one of those movies that I felt like, if you could imagine if this had been released 15 years later, all of the armchair, the outrage crew would have come out in full force. Mm-hmm. We don't watch the movie, we just get mad, and they would have marched out in full force for this film. And it probably would have been creamed worse than it was at the time, because at the time it still got plenty of bad press. And, I listened to an interview with Ken Watanabe, who this movie, my biggest takeaway from this movie is I need to see everything this guy's ever done and everything he ever will do. And recently I got proven wrong because I didn't know he was a detective in Detective Pikachu. So I missed that one. But no, I've literally very closely followed, well, I guess not that closely, but fairly closely followed Ken Watanabe's career after this. Loved him in Inception. Even his cameo in Batman Begins was, favorable to me because I was like, Ken, what's up? So, I mean, this
Batman
movie,
Begins and The Last Samurai were only 4 or 5 years apart.
True.
Yeah. Like maybe even as few as 3 years apart. I'm a Ken Watanabe
fan
myself.
Old.
This was his first film made in an American studio or with American Western backing, and the first film he ever spoke English in. And I want to get to that in a little bit, but we know, and audience, if you're listening, you may have known that there's the idea that Tom Cruise playing the hero in an epic world and environment of heroism, or at least romanticized to be heroic or to be poetic, the way of Bushido, or the way of this inner peace, that this movie does a great job of showing you how that could be attained, or what that is a goal. But really, it's the opposite of the derogatory term white savior. Algren needs saving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much so.
This culture does it. I'm going to bounce around to just the Algren character. Lizzy, he does need saving, doesn't he? This job isn't something that would necessarily be considered heroic. He is a bore of a man. He's downing whiskey. He's making a fool of himself as far as a culture that values politeness and respect. This is something where we get to see a transformation.
Yes. I would describe him as an empty vessel. Like, I know that that's like such like a harsh thing to describe someone as, but you can tell he's so deeply like underneath the layers of his subconscious, he's only allowing himself to revisit them in his dreams. He's deeply wounded by the tragic decisions that he made and when during his war where he was deemed a hero, but he doesn't allow himself to really feel that outside of his dreams. So instead he's just medicating with alcohol. When he first gets to Japan and he meets with his translator and his whole team, and they start talking about samurai, he's like, I don't care about samurai. I just need to know my enemy. Like, he's literally just like, I don't care. I don't want to be here. I don't want to learn about your culture. I'm not interested in it. I literally just need to be able to know enough about them so that I can do my job and get paid and go home. And you slowly but surely, once he's in captivity and that initial kind of where am I, what do you want with me wears off, he's able to see that these people were painted as savages to him, but he sees that their way of life is a quiet, dignified way. They have integrity and respect, and it's just this quiet, like very salt of the earth way of living. And they have a set of values that they live by, that they live or die by those values. And in so many ways, just being around people that are so deeply convicted allows him to start to feel again. And it's really, really fun to watch that transformation. And I have to say, the last thing I'll say is I want so badly to dislike Tom Cruise. I'm going to be honest. I want to so bad, but I cannot help myself. He's just that good. I'm like Anne Rice, when he's released as like she was like outraged when he was cast in Interview with the Vampire. He has this ability to act very earnest without arrogance. And there's something about that allows you to connect with him. And I really, really enjoyed watching his character arc.
He has a presence that it's real. Like his movie presence is, and he can modulate it. He can be the bombastic main character in something, or he can take a step back and really, like, I feel like in this movie, he's still present, but he kind of fumbles through finding something in the end that is more important, and it's something he had lost, that importance, that's something to fight for. And he, throughout the whole film, he is nothing but a pragmatic soldier. Like that, like soldiering is the only thing he knows how to do well, and he kind of speaks to that quite frequently. And another fun thing I thought about the film, and just for how I do things in my own life, I would pay thousands of dollars to read the journals of Nathan Algren.
Yeah, a lovely little token movie.
This is like it's something I do. Like I bought Ulysses S. Grant's letters to his wife. Like they published all the letters he wrote to his wife during the Civil War. Like I would read this guy's book when he hands that satchel over to Simon Graham. I was like, I want to read those. Can I read those? Can I please read those? Like that is, nobody writes like that. No one journals like that in the way that a soldier would back then. And oh my God, I was like, if they ever did something where they just published, some dude went out and wrote the introspective journals of Captain Nathan Algren, it'd be one of those, please take my money.
You said he was, I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but like acutely aware of the ironies of his life, because the only thing he knows how to do well is, to your point, is to soldier, but yet he's completely haunted by the things that he has to do in order to do it well. So he was just a very haunted character. And then you watch that soften, and it's so great.
At least a quarter of this movie, it's 43 minutes before he sobers up on a mat on the ground in Taka's house.
Yep.
And we are bouncing around a little bit. That's okay. This talking about what this movie shows you and what it can bring out in your own mind is lovely. He sobers up, but it's still taking you a while to warm up to who this Algren character is. And that is juxtaposed with our very first shot is of a meditating Ken Watanabe, a meditating Katsumoto, who is seeing this vision of a white tiger surrounded by his samurai warriors, which then comes to fruition at the battle after the railroad attack in the blue misty trees.
Yes.
Where he's confronted with this vision again. And a lot of important small things that we just don't have the time to talk about on the show tonight, but important small things. And he removes his mask and he wants to get close and see, what is this caged animal, this foreign white-skinned cornered beast, and what does it mean to my world? You fast forward to about an hour in, after the events of what Bryan had explained. He takes out a samurai, and this particular warrior that he kills is Hirotoro. His wife is the one who ends up taking care of him. His widow is tasked with taking care of this prisoner of war, and she asks her brother. She asks the leader of the samurai, the shame is going to kill me. Why are you doing this? And he doesn't know. He doesn't understand it. He can't find the answer in meditation. Is the reason? There must be some reason he's here, is what he says out loud. And he doesn't know either, but he's dedicated at least to whatever this journey is, whatever this thing is, this unknown. And it's Algren's immersion in this culture and this sort of chance capturing that really ends up being, you used the term earlier, Lizzy, serendipitous, is that this is what saves him. And in the end, it kind of swings back to where Algren can learn to appreciate this culture, which, by the way, you mentioned the journal, Bryan. The voiceover of him reading his journal entries are really good for this movie.
Very good.
For as rough and tumble as a character he is, a lot of people at this time were way better at written prose or basically poetry to describe what it is that he's experiencing. But yeah, Bryan, his immersion in this culture. You mentioned, you were the one in your plot summary, you mentioned the Bushido. Tell me about this atmosphere that we are just diving into.
I would actually argue that I see people label this often as a war movie. I actually think this is a peace movie. I think this is a movie that is underlying and exclaiming and circling the word peace. It is, whether it's his experience in, like, I'm going to use Ujio as an example, where this dude loves messing with him. Like, he wants to make him flinch. He beats the crap out of him with the practice sword. Yeah. Like, he wants to be the dog. He's just kicking the crap out of him. And you symbolically, you get the first kind of view of what makes American warfare so dangerous to Japanese is the time where they're fighting and he just keeps getting back up.
Yes, he does.
Right. Yes.
And that's very symbolic of what they will be facing, because this isn't a culture where defeat ends in death. This is a culture when defeat is learned from, and they keep getting up. So, there's a culture shock, and this initially, in the same way that, Algren talks to his translator about, wanting to know the samurai, Ken Watanabe knows that this is a different monster. This is something that the samurai have never faced before, and that they have to learn a new way to fight. So really, there's strong parallels between the two of them. But in a mentor-mentee sense, he knows that this way of battle and this way of life has has tortured what he's read to be a generally honorable soul. And I think as they go through time, like, he didn't know at the time why he was keeping him alive, but I think he very quickly, as he read the journals and everything, realized, like, this is someone that I would fight beside. He's seen things and done things in his culture that are maybe reprehensible in mine. Now, I'm not trying to romanticize the samurai, because there was some messed up stuff.
There's plenty of that already.
Yeah. So, there's some messed up stuff that happened on that line too. But what I am saying in terms of this film, he's seeing someone that's like, hey, this is an honorable warrior that has been ordered to do some dishonorable things. Clearly, he's destroying himself over it, because otherwise he'd be Colonel Bagley. Like, you get to see the dichotomy between the guy who believes that following orders blindly is justified, versus the one that knows moral wrongness where he sees it and is horrified by the things that he did under, this person's command. So, this movie is about, to wrap it back around, I feel like this movie, its contemplative sequences in the beginning and the middle and sort of at the end to a degree, is a celebration of the peace that hopefully a warrior can attain.
Yeah. There is an idea that if you were to, let's just say, zoom in on a wide angle of one of Attila the Hun's battle camps, that it would be raucous and there would be fighting, and it would be like
super rapey.
It would be, and it would be like a bandit's paradise, and that's what, like, pirates would be too, right? Is that the way to make hard warriors is to be hard and nasty and unforgiving. And Lizzy, I think this movie does such an incredible job of showing you, oh, this is Nobutada's village, this peaceful, beautiful hamlet. And this is where we dedicate ourselves to, I believe the line is something like, they wake up every morning and begin practicing the perfection of every task that they do.
Yes.
It's such a little hamlet, isn't it?
Yes.
I love just the one scene of Ujio making tea.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like the other side of the
master,
coin.
The battle master who leads all of these killers. It's important enough for him to not only pour the ladle the correct way, but then to put his hand out and rest it slowly on the side. And it's also important enough that little Higen is watching him.
Yes. It's so good that it's also like, they make it known too that the perfectionism, kind of a little bit to your point, Bryan, like, I feel like perfectionism is looked at as, or we try to attain it almost in the States, kind of for like almost like personal honor. Whereas I think they really drove the point home that, like, perfection is strived for, not for one's personal honor, but for, like, the honor of, like, their community as a whole. It's like, I'm going to take pride in making this tea because I'm going to be able to make this tea just the right way. And then whether I'm drinking it for myself or I'm serving it to somebody else, I'm going to give honor to this person potentially that I'm serving it to. And then their experience drinking tea can then trickle into the next activity they do. It's like this idea of this very, like, osmosis synergy that plays into one another, and it all kind of works for the betterment of this village. And so that, because when I hear of perfection, I almost get this, like, trigger, almost, if you will, of anxiety a little bit. And whereas watching it in the way that they did it, it almost felt calming and kind of inspiring in that same way too, of being like, wouldn't it be so nice if we tried to be perfect, not out of our own personal gain, but just so that we can enrich the lives of the people around us and can make everybody function better, not just for ourselves.
You know, in that same similar vein, they showed some women who were working a loom to make fabric, and you see the little kids. Higen and one of his friends are kind of sparring with their wooden swords, and a part of it is playful until the training and the respect for what I've been shown. Higen gets, we'll say, a killing blow on his friend, and they smile at each other like, yeah, this is we are. I don't even know if perfection is the right word. It's the pursuit of like wholeness.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Is to be whole in this way. And then you also think Katsumoto mentions, my family built this temple 900 years ago. Something that is really not put into like the forefront is the focus on like respecting tradition, history, or ancestry. It is definitely mentioned, but it's not like the whole crux of this movie. It matters, but it's not the whole crux of this movie. It's more about like what this group and the era we had been living in had meant to us, our group of people. We were to protect the emperor. That is what our whole lifestyle is about. And to move away from it is an abandonment of just the way that things have been and the way that things seemingly should be for this group of people. But it does bring up a tough question, which is, I think in general movies do an incredible job of romanticizing the ways of the past are grand, and they need to be respected. The Jedi Order needs to be respected, and moving towards modernism is frequently, like most frequently seen as like, this is the bad thing.
Right. So I don't think that it necessarily romanticized it, because I mean, a good example was there, like one of the first things that you see right when you're into the village is someone getting decapitated. And it's like this idea of like, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the person doing it like admitted defeat. And so it's like this idea of like as samurai, like you don't like, it would be better to die than to admit defeat. And so like they have these value sets that they live and die by that can feel very extreme. And so I think for those reasons, I wouldn't say that it's romanticized. It's certainly beautiful, and there is this kind of quieter mindset about it of this idea of, you see Nathan really doesn't start to connect with fighting until he starts to connect with himself. He has that moment where like he stops and he starts breathing and he starts really thinking in his mind of memorizing the body movements of his fighting partner. And, so I think they drive home a lot that so much of the samurai way is mental. And I think that is very appealing and very attractive. And I love that idea of like, so much of what we're able to overcome is just really all in our minds. But I would say that they don't romanticize it too much. And I think as far as the other side goes, where talking about kind of the more modernization, I think it's always, they kind of felt like they fell into a little bit of that trope where it's like they have maybe not all of your characters, but at least the emperor seems to have good intentions. Like he seems to think that maybe this is for the best for our people, and then just realizes that at the end of the day, kind of to my point earlier of like their pursuit of perfection for the betterment of their tribe. It's like this particular modern pursuit of perfection is kind of more for things that will sustain and help Japan thrive, but not necessarily in a way that's actually going to behoove the people of Japan. So it's
or it might have them forget who they are. It might.
Yes.
That was a real hard selling point at the end, which I think is maybe the easiest thing to write is, if you advance, then you are forgetting your traditions.
Yes.
And that must be bad or wrong. And I don't want to call it lazy writing, but it definitely it exists in all across all other types of media. Bryan, I wasn't anticipating to take too long on this, but we also have like this this does matter. Of Amura represents our sort of greed and pursuit of like capital gains and power through resources, as opposed to this warrior culture.
I don't think there is absolutely anything wrong whatsoever about putting samurai life in its best utopian form as a foot forward in this film. I think it's what makes it not the film that everyone criticizes it to be. I think that putting this is the best that this had to offer, that this is the ideal way of life that was Bushido and the way of the samurai. It was an honor to Japanese culture, and I think that they felt the same way too. I don't want to say that inherently modernization cheapens things, but it does to a certain degree, because you look at what we do now in terms of mass production. Like, they talk about, if you think about it from a quality standpoint, do you want a hand spun robe from feudal Japan, or do you want the kimono you bought at Walmart? Like, clearly one's going to be far better than the other. It's something that I really noticed in very stark contrast when I was in Ireland. There's no urban sprawl there, not really. And, once you get out of the city, which is not anywhere like our cities, it's beautiful countryside, sheep, and, you could hit any pub and they've got the same 5 or 6 beers on tap, and everything's merry and happy, and families bring their kids to the pub on Sundays because that's what they do on Sundays after church, and there's a simplicity to that is absolutely beautiful, and it's something that we don't enjoy at all in America. And when you look at this film and you see, like, someone who's frankly tired of the materialism of, you see it in the Winchester things he's doing to, on behalf of those who died for better mechanical amusements, and just chucks the gun at him. Like, there is a cheapening of life. There's a cheapening of our souls that comes with industrial modernization. Now, I'll also say on the other head, the other side of that coin is, if you don't progress, you die, because history is fraught with cultures who were, placid at one point in time and refused to, see the future, and they were gone. So, there's a lot to be argued here on likes and dislikes and whatnot, and what's best, and if you can allow both to coexist, obviously that's a pipe dream to a certain degree. But I'm sure if you go to Japan, there is a village out there that lives the old way, and, like our Amish or Mennonite, cultures here in the U.S., and they strive for perfection, and they do it without stuff, and that's a truly beautiful thing.
Yes, agreed.
There is there's a lot shown in this movie of sort of the minor intricacies of interacting with one another, of how you enter a room. I think we have Captain Algren, after one of his long walks, contemplative, learning the beauty, being able to breathe in fresh air without coughing because he's craving alcohol. And he's just taken in the beauty, and then he walks in and he turns around, and immediately Taka is behind him, wiping the mud off the floor. Because he just didn't realize the taboo that he had just, sort of,
Please make him take a bath.
And and then you have other instances where the samurai ride into town, and half of the crowd is cowering in fear. The other half of the crowd is bowing in deference. because the whole world in Japan, the whole Japanese world that they're in Tokyo in that instance, they don't know what's going on either. They are, some of them are still holding on, and a lot of them still have their shrines to their ancestors in their home, and others are wearing Western clothing, like the Emperor is. And the Emperor makes the choice. We need to get a standing army if we are to compete with, defend, or be thought of as a modern society, which in all accounts can't be wrong, is that you have to keep up with the rest of the world. And to have an entire portion of your we'll call it defense force be guys with swords and armor, it will leave you behind. So you can see why he would be, going in that direction.
Just for the major history buffs out there, we realize that this is not where firearms actually came from in feudal Japan, or even the types of firearms, or even really the same age that firearms were introduced. So just this was a wonderfully crafted story to tell a story. But like you had to make it a little bit more centralized to make this story happen, as opposed to what actually happened with the introduction of firearms to Japan. One of the pieces in terms of not using them as a samurai, because there were tons of samurai who used firearms. I think that to the movie's purpose is having a truly yin and yang effect of old ways versus the new. What was stated on his sword, the guy wearing armor into battle with a sword and a revolver and a shoulder holster. You had to make a clear delineation between for the movie's statement, between what was and what will be.
Yeah, and if we're, and I don't want to be the insert history here either, because that's where you start to get things wrong. That's where I certainly would start to get things wrong. But we do know that the Japanese did hire the number one modern army military force was the Prussians. And they hired Prussians to come and train their military at that point. And so we are just barely getting close to truths of that time. And on top of that, I think the movie does, it might just be one line, but they say that Katsumoto so holds these old ways in deference that him and his forces don't use firearms anymore. As in, like, they even mention that they are aware of them, they know them, but they...
Matsumoto no longer disgraces himself by using firearms.
That's it. That's exactly
He uses no firearms.
So this is all stuff where the length allows you to give a little more detail for when you need to. But like, speaking of detail, I want to get to some of our supporting actors. We were mentioning some of the subtleties of this job, or of this movie, when it's time to you have all this time to let it sink in. I think you have some small roles. Let's just say our Timothy Spall character, who is the translator Simon Graham. You have Ken Watanabe, his son Nobutada, the guy who is the archer, who, by the way, we also get a lovely scene of him in that golden field firing his bow. Bagley,
I love the ad of the dust or wheat, whatever, after he really, that was a great shot.
I think that Tony Goldwyn, I know you like Tony Goldwyn, but I think he's great as playing this, like, this colonel character from his past, who is the one who directed these in the campaign against the Native Americans. Like, he kind of directed these atrocities. Ujio, an incredible sort of side character as this.
Loved him in 47 Ronin. Loved him in 47 Ronin.
Everybody
where he got to play the Katsumoto character in that.
Everybody loves Hiroyuki
Sanada.
He's known as the Tom Cruise of Japan.
Yeah, there you
go. But speaking of subtleties, I want to talk about Taka briefly. Is there any stranger pairing of a male lead and a female supporting actor, of the widow who, through duty-bound honor, is meant to take care of and dote on the person who killed her husband.
Not only that, but really do things in his favor, like denying him alcohol. It was crucial, frankly.
Yes. I mean, I loved that storyline. The whole storyline was one of my favorite things. It just added so much depth to the movie. And to me, you know, Nathan speaks to so much spirituality that he feels there. And I feel that the most in the relationship that he has with Taka, because to me, that is the ultimate obedience. You know, we make sure that we know that she's tortured by this, because they make it a point to put that scene in where she says, like, brother, this is too much for me. Just take my life. Like, she would rather die in the beginning than feed and clothe and care for Nathan's character. And then slowly but surely you start to see, I think he warms up to her way faster than she warms up to him. But to me, it's just such it's like the equivalent, like you hear these like really unbelievable stories of like something awful that happened to like let's say, for example, there's a situation that happened with some people that I used to work with, where something really, really tragic happened to their son because of a driver that was not paying attention. And the humility and like strength in their voice they were able to exhibit to kind of not only get through this eulogy that they were giving, but also have such a tremendous spirit of forgiveness towards their son's perpetrator was nothing but supernatural. I mean, there's just some things that supersede understanding. And so like that's something that Taka absolutely has. And there's towards the end of the movie when you can tell that they develop I'll call it like a fondness for each other. She says so much without saying anything.
Oh, she does, doesn't she?
Oh, it's
There's a lot of that in this film too.
It's really powerful. And there's so many really beautiful scenes, like the scene of her, you know, while she's bathing, she's finishing bathing, you know, her shoulders exposed. And I didn't know where direction this was going. I specifically looked over at Aaron and I was like, you know, he better not like take her honor from her or something like that. Like, you know, you never know what direction a movie like this could go in. And just those shy little moments where she covers herself, yet they, you know, are able to exchange this kind of curious look with each other. I mean, there's just so much that's being said without saying anything at all. And then, of course, that very last look that they give each other when he returns back to the village, it's like I'm assuming that she did not know that he survived. And it's just this like, you get this sense that they're going to live happily ever after together in some kind of new blended family way. And it's just so great. I really, really love that storyline.
Well, let me jump into that real quick. I always felt at the end of the film, because, you know, Simon Graham has given this idea like no one knows what happened to him, but I like to think it's this.
Yes.
Him returning as the modern man wooed by the older society, and her expressing happiness that he has returned, is that culmination of the blending of it the right way.
Yes.
It happening, you know, homogeneously, as opposed to forcing a change, you know, strongly in a people. It was it's the blending.
Yes.
And
what better way to blend than like with family?
Well, and I always appreciated in this movie that they never explicitly said that they got together.
I agree. I think
he did a lot of dad things with the kids. The more I watch this film, it's like, look, you know, she's honor bound to miss and love her husband and everything. I'm wondering, just tossing it out there. But I'm just wondering how much love was actually in that marriage and what kind of person he really was, because clearly he didn't care about killing a dude when he's down. And it's different than Katsumoto's, helping execute his general friend. I felt like he seemed much more of a Ujio type guy. And not only did Katsumoto and Ujio kind of see a better man in Alren toward the end of that, but so did his family. Like,
yeah,
dad was like, and again, I'm not trying to make stuff up here, but I just got kind of a feeling where, like, were the kids sad when Hirotora went off to battle, or were they just like, I understand it is your duty, sir? Like, whereas when Algren went, he's upset because he's afraid you won't come back too.
I know.
Yeah,
and I felt like, I felt like that might have been the first time the kids were upset that the dad figure was going off to battle, because they were treated like he got him over his teaching him a game of baseball, and he's got him over his shoulder, and they're playing, and the kids are giggling and something like. I'm not sure how much
primary way of learning the language he gets to learn. with them.
Yeah. And I don't know how much laughter really happened outside of goofy plays once a year with Katsumoto playing the fool. Like, I don't know how much laughter really existed in that village before Algren got there.
Very, very good point.
Well, there's another thing too.
You guys keep talking. I got to run to the bathroom. Sorry.
There's another thing there, which I think is. I'm glad you brought it up. Is there a chance that Hirotora was not some great husband, and maybe Taka sees that with Higen and Magorojiro, the two kids, the way that they take to Algren is something really special, as on top of just whatever she sees in him. I had to imagine that, and I want to before we get into our superlatives, I just wanted to talk about this movie's emotional peaks, and that's why I wanted to bring in the subtleties, because by saying very little, the emotion is so high with her.
Yes.
Frye just brought up that there's a lot of a lot of instances where there's nothing that's said, but the time that we take that Zwick like has on someone's face shows you that, like, what are they thinking of? Are they trying to be, when Algren sees her bathing, he's staring for a little bit, and the staring, he has just learned Japanese, or he's learning enough, so he's trying to figure out what to say. Her first response is, "Forgive me, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm in your way." She has to do it that way. But I have to imagine, Lizzy, did this point hit you hard when he's helping her with the task? She says, "Japanese men don't help with this." She says, I'm not a Japanese man.
I love that scene. That had to have been such because kind of a little bit to Bryan's point, it is like the perfect merging of modernization and traditionalism, in this sense of, most likely that marriage was not a love match. And this idea of bringing in this more modern way of thinking of, like, there is duty and there is order and there is a way of things, but at the same time, there can still be space for lightheartedness and fun and love, and also partnership that doesn't always have to be rooted in this having a sense of duty. And I loved that, because you kind of start to see her soften a little bit in those moments too, where she's taken aback at his generosity towards her. And I imagine it's probably the first time she's ever felt that before.
I couldn't imagine what it must felt. I made a note of it as I was watching the movie, because this is my 25th time watching it, is that when he learns how to say "I'm sorry," he says, "Kumen asai, kumen asai." And in English, he says, "for your husband." But, months have gone by. This movie happens over like 2 years. Months have gone by where she's been in this role, and he has learned to say, I mean, I don't know what else he's supposed to say. I'm sorry for killing your husband.
Yeah.
Like, I to hear it would be something that, like, this is, once again, these emotional peaks. Brian, I'm going to bounce to another one. You mentioned wordless exchanges. In order to bust Katsumoto out from Tokyo, Nobutada gets shot, and he ends up staying to cover the retreat, to cover the escape. And when he gets shot, Katsumoto has a chance to stand his son up and look at him. And it's 10 seconds. They don't say anything to each other. And Watanabe's eyes are watering up, and you can just see it, that there's just this, I'm not supposed to bury a son, right? But there's just so much throughout this whole movie of instances like this.
I even love like the exchange when they're in the cherry blossom field. At this point, the assassination attempt on him has been made, and so Nathan has been like summoned to Kashimoto's place, and or at least to this like particular area with all these gorgeous cherry blossoms, and he hands him his satchel. Yeah. And he says very, very quickly, and he just hands it to him and just says, when I took this, you were my enemy. And then just walks away very, very quickly, and it's, and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm very shocked at how quickly he walked away. And then after kind of marinating on it a little bit, you're like, but that's very much like his culture is like, I'm not going to pour my heart out. I'm going to give you a gesture of respect and make it known to you that you're not my enemy. And that is my version of pouring my heart out to you, and I think it was really powerful in a scene where so little was said. And at that point, that's really where you get Nathan and his fork in the road, because at this point now he can leave, he can do whatever he wants. And really it's because of this gesture now where he feels completely accepted, and really kind of an honorary member of this village in some rights that gives him the gumption to want to return.
Ujio is really giving Alren the business.
Yeah.
And they spar, and then they're taking bets, right? Ujio will take this in 3 moves. Oh, I think it'll be 5. And,
that one dude is terrible. And his friend knows it too. He's like, this guy doesn't know crap, man. It's going to be 5.
Yeah, the big strong guy
6.
who wields so then it's the third spar that you get a little bit of that like almost Zen, like understand, predict, like you've seen the movements before, where they draw and Ujio gives him the nod. He doesn't bow to him. It's like instead of the dude like nod, it's the dude bow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. You learned a bit.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite parts of that scene is the dude who's terrible at betting is probably the second best warrior out of all of them.
Yes,
like
he is.
The dude who's taking advantage of him knows that he kicks his butt all the time, but knows he's trash at betting. And like this is his chance. Like this is the one thing he can beat this guy at, and he's like, I think it's gonna be this.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be that. And I love the almost Loki character that guy brings to that scene, saying like, this guy is a bamf, but he's crap at reading this stuff, and I like, this is the one thing I can beat him at, and I'm gonna take him to the house.
That is a funny scene, but it's so crazy. We've gone as long as we haven't even talked about fighting yet.
Sure.
I
don't think it. Yeah, I know. It's just not a movie about fighting.
It's and the battle scenes are great, but let's just say that we know they're great. Yeah. Listeners, you'll love them too. But I'm so invested now in these emotional peaks. Katsumoto, if my sword isn't needed in here, only the Emperor can command me to take him off. And that silence just breaks your heart.
Oh man.
Even the look in his eyes, like I think he was almost more emotional, with the Emperor than he was with his son's death.
Yes. When they're walking on the bridge, the Emperor, who's like a 16-year-old kid,
Yeah.
Teacher, tell me what to do. And he bows prostrate, completely as low as possible. You're the Emperor. You have to find the wisdom for us all. Is that he knows that if he wanted to end this rebellion and change, or at least stop the change he felt was devastating to his culture, that all he had to do was say the word.
Mm-hmm.
But he was too honor bound to the God King of the Emperor and its position being holy and being righteous and being this is the right, that he couldn't do it. I thought that this is just another instance of there's just it's contemplative, it's high emotion that makes you feel. You're right, it's not a war movie, and it's about what happens that war is trying to preserve. We see the preservation of this stuff. I want to say so much more about this movie, but we have to get to our superlatives. Unless there was one other thing you wanted to bring up in this discussion part.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go.
All right, Bryan, who's your MVP of The Last Samurai?
I really wanted to put the soundtrack, but I went with Ken Watanabe. He really made this movie for me. I think that there are probably more better, well-known Japanese male leads that could have done it, but I can't thank the casting director enough for picking him to have been the one that actually did it, because not only did it really make this movie for me, but it introduced me to a new actor that I really had a chance to follow on in his career.
Oh, absolutely worthy choice. Lizzy, who's your MVP?
I put Japan. I think that
Country for the win.
I was truly blown away by how breathtaking this movie was. It was, not only did I just enjoy the depth that the movie had, but every single shot was just gorgeous. So for me, Japan really just made it beautiful for us. Made Aaron and I want to go there someday.
There's an issue with American audiences loving Japan too much, and that is rough. To like this movie a lot and to want to distance yourself from the people that are
right. Yeah.
Now, is it loving Japan too much, or is it the breeding visas they're giving out right now?
Yuck, Bryan. It's just like I looked it up. The term like weeaboo comes from Japanophilia. Is like this. There's a thing that just people are obsessed with it, and it's hard to enjoy this movie knowing that there's people that are obsessed in that way. I went with Ken Watanabe as well. I thought it was a presence. You're in awe of him every moment you see him, and there's a great benefit of having a well-written character, and this fight that he's fighting is something that you see why he cares about it so much. But he's an imposing man. He's very tall, especially for Japanese standards, so it kind of makes sense that he's like the leader of this samurai cast. But I thought he was dynamite. And it's the reason I come back to it. I think of it as it's a Tom Cruise movie, but it's Watanabe is like my guy in it. Bryan, who's your best supporting?
I went with the soundtrack here. I had to mention it at least somewhere. I actually own it on CD and vinyl. It is something I truly love listening to.
Yeah, it's great.
When I first picked up Ghost of Tsushima, like the music of that is great too, but sometimes I'll like overlay it with Last Samurai music.
No, that makes sense. Nice. That's really cool, and it swells. Some of your emotional acting is just multiplied. It doesn't just add to the scene; it multiplies how much that scene will hit you. Lizzy, who's your best supporting?
This is when I went with Watanabe. I think he did such a good job of, I really loved his story arc of being somebody that typically it's felt like to me, like anytime that he ever felt like he needed answers, he knew where to find them with sitting within himself and meditating. And I loved watching his own personal arc of frustration with Alren and just his like those final moments of like his death, his final breath. Like it was just, he did just such a great job. He really made this movie so much fun to watch and so believable. Like you get really lost in it when you watch it. And I think so much of that is because of him.
Those first couple conversations are pretty fun too. Like there's
yes, yeah. It's like we've had good and like at the very end, it all circles back. Like I will miss our conversations.
Oh yeah,
nice.
Yeah. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself.
That's a good conversation.
Good conversation.
Yes.
My best supporting here, I went with an actor, is Hiroyuki Sanada. He's our Ujio. I can't not go with him. I think I'm on the same path that you are, Bryan, with Watanabe, as I am with Sanada. And I think it was 2 years ago now that we did Sunshine. He's in that movie. He's in John Wick 4. He's in so much, and this will bring me to Japanese movie productions. Like 95 and earlier, I've probably got 40 of them that I could watch, and I can't wait to watch the movies that he was the lead in. All right, this is a movie that I think is ripe for this category. Bryan, what's your hidden gem?
So I'm gonna blank on his name right now because I didn't write it down. But the British interpreter,
Timothy Spall.
I don't think he was in Harry Potter yet. So when I came back around to it and he was Wormtail, I was like,
yes.
That messed with me a little bit, and now I have weird like pan angle piece on him where I'm like, you probably shouldn't trust him.
The first like good guy role that he's ever been in, to my knowledge. I'm sure he has, but at least not his mainstream stuff. He's always like a slimy kind of guy.
Right.
He's Beetleborgs.
And I truly loved one of his quotes in this. He's like, "This very unfortunate thing about telling the truth in a country where no one ever says what they mean. So now I very accurately translate other people's lies." I'm just
that was great.
That's a great line. That's a great choice. Lizzy, what's your hidden gem?
I went with, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but Koyuki, who plays Taka. I think she did tremendously. And I kind of touched on it a little bit, but what my hidden gem is that she says so much just with her looks. And I think that I have to imagine as an actor, that's probably really, really challenging to be able to have so much emotion and only emote on your face. Like you're not allowed to speak. And she really doesn't move that much. She's very still and stoic. So to be able to have a character that is supposed to operate with a lot of grace and a lot of dignity and to just kind of be very kind of like this calming presence, but yet say so much, I just speaks to her talent. So I think she did such a great job.
It really does. You could close a door. Anyone in the world could. She closes the door. What does it mean? It's
yes.
So much.
Is it an invitation? Is she trying to? She want her privacy? Is she upset? Is she not upset? There's just so much.
It's part of her duty. I've got one, and this is another emotional peak. And if I were to say the name Satoshi Nikaido, you might not know, but this guy plays the Japanese officer in the Imperial Standing Army. He's the only officer. He's got a little mustache. He's the guy he's at the battle in the blue fog sort of forest, and then he's at the last battle commanding the howitzers and the new guns.
Yes, and he's the one that yells at them to stop. Is that him?
Yes.
Yes.
He is the one who, after, because the emotion's getting to him too.
Yes,
he's seeing what this has wrought, and as he sees his countrymen down, fallen in the field, he's the one that goes down to bow in deference, and everyone follows his lead. But I think he's also, for a small part, someone that you can see a lot of the emotion in his face as well.
Yes, agreed.
And I rarely pick an actor as my hidden gem, so I thought that one was really good. All right, Bryan, a recast here. Who are you going with?
I can't touch it. Like I don't think I would really be happy if I had just had to throw a foul ball. I think what I'd really like to see is just a touch of more British presence there, like someone who is not just the interpreter meeting them at the docks. So I'm just going to add a character if I could.
That works.
I want to see someone like Bill Nye with Worm Tongue or Wormtail when they show up, and he's just like, "Welcome to Japan." And, just this austere Brit, like basically, like you'll find that this country doesn't know who it is, and you're just basically, yeah, exactly, just Japan is all around y'all.
Yes.
Yeah, I needed just one other like kind of snobby Brit to like
funny,
welcome them to the docks, and he goes, "If you need me, I'll be in my corner." The translator's piece is almost so soft, like this is all I could spare you. This guy who stinks at what we had him doing before. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like it would have added a little bit more backing to his part. I don't.
Sure, maybe he's in the room with Omura. Maybe he's part of the idea of what this sort of push towards modernization. Like he's been there for a while. I can see that.
I don't even necessarily need him to be like the assistant antagonist. I just think it's one of those, like, how did Simon Graham get assigned that job? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like we're going to give the new Americans who are getting the job of training the army and of supplying weapons our crappy, in our minds, interpreter in order to secure us a better station as the runner-up when they fail.
I don't know. I guess there might not be too many translators, I suppose.
So again, it's just one of those things, because they say like the French and the Dutch are in the room next door. Like, you've already got him copping to the fact that he kind of gets in trouble for telling the truth all the time. Like, I could totally see him being sent by the British embassy saying like, we could totally get these rights. We're talking about British West Indies time right now. So I could totally see him being sent as almost like a red herring to mess him up.
Yeah.
I'm adding plot points.
That would take us down like a wormhole, though. That I don't know. This movie's already 2.5 hours long.
But all you had to do is have that one little piece where the guy's like, have this guy.
Yeah, watch your step around the corners, boy. Okay, Lizzy, who are you recasting?
So I wanted to replace Billy Connolly, who plays Zeb, and it's not necessarily because I dislike. It's not like I didn't dislike him. One of his quotes is actually in my superlatives, but I just felt like I wanted somebody that I felt like gave like more like cameo energy. And it's a Tom Cruise movie, and you know how much I love Val Kilmer. So I just thought it'd be so great to have him in that state. He was fighting like right alongside with him, bring that like Wyatt Earp energy. Like no, he wasn't Wyatt Earp. He's
I'll be a Huckleberry.
Doc Holliday.
Thank you. I was like, I know like Huckleberry, but yeah. But I think that would just be so great. Because just have him in it for like a second, and they kind of could be like a Game of Thrones thing, where because he's such like a top billed actor, you think that he's going to be in it for a while, and then he's just axed, and the rest of the movie's about Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I knew Billy Connolly was. I knew I couldn't touch him. Not with you on the show, Bryan.
No, oh yeah.
So I wasn't going to. I thought I really liked our Shin Koyamada as Nobutada, as the son, the archer. I thought his arc was weaved in. He mattered, but not a ton. But I thought his performance was good. But this was like low enough down the ladder where I felt like I could recast it. And, I was gonna go with Louis Fan, or Fan Su Wong. Now most people wouldn't know this name. The only thing I can point most of our audience members to is from 2008's Ip Man with Donnie Yen.
Yeah.
The young northern guy who walks into Foshan, who walks into the city to beat up all of the kung fu masters. That's him. That's Louis Fan. So I thought if we replaced the guy who plays Nobutada with this kind of more rough and tumble kid, that the character would have to change. And I thought that would be okay. Although I did like Nobutada's character, especially we talked about emotional peaks when he's being harassed by the soldiers outside. They cut his top knot off. That's rough.
Right.
So
I know.
it's every time it's rough. But that's where I felt I was safe recasting. Best shot, Bryan.
I love the petals falling to the ground while they were having that talk for the last time. It was the perfect blossom scene.
Yeah.
And in Japanese culture, cherry blossoms represent the fleeting nature of life and teaches samurai to seize the present moment and cherish every experience. So I felt like that really summed up what the whole village experience was supposed to be for Tom Cruise.
What you just said completely changed my belief of one of these lines. What does he say? You can spend your life looking for the perfect blossom, and it would not be a wasted life. And to say they're all perfect is just to realize, incredible. Yeah. What's your best shot, Lizzy?
I love when they're heading back I believe they're heading back from the Emperor's, and there's this shot that's got Taka is looking down in the valley, watching everybody ride back. And it just kind of is this like perfect shot of Japan. We have like these huge mountains, and then the samurai on horseback coming, and like she's in this like very grassy area with cherry blossoms. And to me, it just felt like the most picturesque view that you could possibly have. I mean, to me, like that could have been a poster of like her watching the samurai warriors come back to the village. It was perfect.
It is perfect. The way that you capture that, the colors of that little village are so great. Mine are also samurai on horseback, but it is the first shot of the first battle you get when they've got the new army up, and that officer says, "Samurai come," and you can hear, before you see anything, you can hear the galloping hooves, and you can hear like a battle cry. Yeah. And they are shaking in their boots, and the way that it's shot, because that's what was intended. These big helmets are meant to look like these are the forces of hell coming to kill you.
Yeah.
And it is so frightening. Really cool.
Yes.
And it's in slow motion too. They're all bouncing up and down the same way. Thought it was really, really good. When I rewatched this movie, I generally rewatch that scene a couple times. Let's go to the best scene though, Bryan.
My best scene is the Ujo and Alren fighting to a draw.
Yeah, and like you mentioned the thing about the gamblers kind of.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a secondary piece, but that little kind of jackal part of it is funny, but it's the grudging respect that Algren's constantly being told that these people are barbarians, whether he believes it or not, and Ujo looks at him like he's a cheap piece of crap from overseas that they brought in and not a worthy warrior. And then he learns. And not only does he learn, but he does it with a ferocity that won't let him quit, which I think he also learns that there's a respect in the fact that like there's keeping your honor as a defeated man, but when exactly are you the defeated?
He didn't even deem him worthy of holding a wooden practice sword.
Right.
Months before when they're in the rain. You don't even deserve to train with this thing. Yeah, that's a great scene. Lizzy, what about you?
Mine's a little bit paralleled. Mine's actually their first fight scene in the rain. I found that scene so interesting to watch just because I loved how every single time how Nathan just would keep getting up, every single time that he would get knocked down, you'd watch like the blood fall from his nose. And all of a sudden he'd start to get up. And just like you were saying, like on his face, he's walking away triumphant. And then he just kind of looks back almost he's annoyed, but I think also impressed at the same time of this idea of like, just stay down already. Like, I've got you. He thinks he has this guy's number. And then eventually he definitely does. He takes his stick away and throws it. But I found that seemed so interesting. I thought that was definitely setting this scene of Nathan's character of he is not going to give up. He's going to keep going until his body completely gives out.
Yeah.
You know what one of the most detrimental scenes of this film was for me?
Go for it.
Was Tom Cruise calling out to Bob when Bob actually takes a bullet for him.
Well, wait, what do you mean?
It was like literally one of the most brutal scenes for me in this film.
Yeah.
The guy who had been following him around to make sure, I'm sure he didn't do any damage to the village, but also that no one did any damage to him. And he's never spoke a word to him the entire time. He starts calling him Bob because he doesn't know what to call him. And in the end, Bob ends up taking a bullet that was meant for him, protecting him. And it's just the way Tom Cruise yells it, Bob! Like, that was like heart-wrenching.
Yes.
That was like, I was like, oh, like,
but very full circle moment. Yeah.
And you talk about respect without any word spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, the man says nothing to him the entire time. And in the end, is willing to take a bullet for him.
There is.
Like, wow.
Yeah, he's
wow.
listed in the credits as Silent Samurai. He doesn't say anything. His duty is to protect Alren for whatever that is worth. And in the battle, he's very clearly a good, a warrior that can hold it up. But he does yell out, Alren-san! And he's so old, and it sounds like I'm about to fail in my duty in the last moment. And so he upholds his oath till his very end. But yeah, the way that he calls out like this.
Yeah. Oh,
I see what you're saying now.
Bob!
My best scene is a battle scene, but it's not the culminating one. It is the ninja attack. And I thought the ninja attack was fast-paced. It was fun to start it with that sort of like intra-village, like mummers play. That the culture of that seems very fun. Everyone's smiling. Like, this doesn't happen very much. I thought the thing I liked about it most, even as a young kid, was, ninja and samurai are different. And to have like fandom or to have media franchise that focus on them is to think about that they are different. And like, if you had to say like samurai were noble, like ninjas assassinating people or killing from the shadows, that's not really a noble thing. And to see how quickly the village having a good time goes from fear, like, 6 seconds, 10 seconds, now we're mobilized, and they start doing work. And you see Bob start doing work. You see the big guy with the chin strap beard doing work. And Ujio is rallying him around. And then inside the cramped space of the house, the fighting inside there was great. Taka kills a guy. Like that is a scene where like a lot is happening, and it ends with another rallying cry. That's just like the base fight fan in me being like, I love this. So I had to say, as much as I really enjoy the emotional scenes this watch through, I had to go back to my bread and butter. That's just that ninja attack scene rules.
Yes.
Okay, Bryan, what's your best wardrobe or makeup moment?
Probably Ujio's combat wounds before the final charge.
He's pretty red, isn't he?
He's all messed up at that point. He's taking a couple bullets. He's got chunks out of his armor. He's bleeding from the mouth. He still gets up on that horse. He's like, he even yells at the two, like, don't help me.
Yeah, when they help him, like, get off
me. I'm good.
He spits the blood. Yeah, that's a good one. Lizzy, how about you?
This is kind of shallow, but Tom Cruise's hair. I just really love how I love how dramatic it is. It just feels like, because normally his hair is kind of either that length or like very short and kept. And I don't know, I think it kind of like yields itself a little bit to the atmosphere to have it just like a little unkempt and wild. It would have been really, I don't know if it would have been disrespectful or not, but it would have been really neat as long as it wouldn't have been disrespectful had it been long enough to put in a little top knot.
Right.
I think I would have hated that.
Potentially. Yeah. It might have been like it might have been too much.
Right. But you never know. I will say I didn't like his long hair in Interview, his long blonde Lestat hair. But this hair I thought was great. For me, I thought it was the piece of wardrobe that like kind of mattered throughout the movie, which was Hirotaro's red armor, which is later donned by Alren.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think he's imposing in that first scene. I think it's always got a presence in the house. Higen goes and grabs the sword from it to try to defend from the ninja attack. And then later on, I don't know how accurate this is, and I don't know how much weight to put on it, but I have to presume that it must be another part of like a Japanese wife's duty to, when it's time to go to battle, you dress and arm your husband as like, this is how I send my love off with you. And that she does that to him is a stronger connection type feeling than any, like, it communicates way more than a sex scene does.
Yes, I agree. That was a very intimate scene.
Yeah. It even would have been intimate without them sharing the briefest of kisses. It was just, this must matter. And I don't know the culture well enough, but I thought that was interesting. All right, a couple to knock out here. Change one thing, Bryan.
So I really appreciate what they tried to do in terms of like the wounded warrior coming to the village and the detox and everything. But at a certain point, I thought that they could have done maybe a little bit more like medicinal care. Like, you're telling me there's nothing besides alcohol and what? Like, I felt like there was something else in that culture to, like,
a salve and a hot spring or something.
Yeah, like give the man a bath then. Like get him in a tranquil. I don't know. I guess I just felt like all the things he found that were wondrous and amazing. Like, give the man some tea, like some really good tea. Like and maybe it just doesn't fit in the whole like detoxing scene, but I just felt they shut the door and said, "All right, man, you need to like let it out."
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting change. Lizzy, what about you?
I actually, going to the last superlative of yours, Dustin, I would not have them kiss. I don't think that they need it. I don't think it's necessary. I think that scene is as intimate, if not potentially more, than a lot of like love scenes in movies, because it just kind of goes back to what we've been saying before. There's so much that's said in what is not communicated at all with their words. And the way that she so delicately lays her head on his shoulder from behind, it's like they're so tender and loving with each other. But one thing I loved about this movie was how innocent their kind of fondness with each other became. And so I don't know. I think that the kiss, although it was just fine, didn't bother me, but I don't think it was necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not my change one thing, but maybe it should have been, because the words for that scene didn't come up until just 5 minutes ago. Mine's a little stranger. I get that Alren is a hero in this heroic time, but I kind of felt as if maybe somebody else in some kind of respected position, should be the one delivering Katsumoto's sword to Emperor Meiji. I get that that Tom Cruise matters. He's the movie star. But I thought maybe, and Brian, you brought up Algren's journal. In the moment, Emperor Meiji nixes the trade deal, or whatever that thing is that was going to be quote unquote bad for Japan. And he does it based on new information that comes from the delivery of Alren, Katsumoto's sword. Previously, we saw him act or fail to act because there was a room full of board members, council members that he was kind of living in fear of. I thought it would have been maybe more impactful to the teachings of Katsumoto, of what he said about, like, you are the emperor, we need your wisdom now. I thought it'd be cool for him to, like, have that sword delivered and also to read Algren's journal and come to the decision to stand up. Well, I know that Algren's journal ends, but for him to come to the decision to reject the trade deal beforehand and go into it with a new strength, then to have his mind changed in the moment again.
I agree with that.
I actually, I'm going to go a different tact with you. I think Algren's the only person he would listen to, because I think the only reason he was admitted to the palace and allowed to bring weapons in front of him was because the emperor read his book, and Omura read his book, and they sent them out looking for Captain Nathan Algren. Didn't matter who the colonel was or who they brought with them. That's the guy they wanted. That was the face of modernity and warrior leadership that they saw, because that's who they went and sought after. And to have this man come in, kneel before him, and hold up Katsumoto's sword as this is the person you should be honoring. That's what changed his mind.
I like that idea too. I'd like that to happen one day before, so that he comes in stronger than, because we can get the best of both worlds there, at least in this very short writer's room that we just had. No, that's good. It's a good idea too. All right, final one here. Brian, what is your best quote this movie? I think there are several.
They are all perfect.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was, I was just like, dude.
Yeah.
Just makes fun of me. She was like, you get choked up on the weirdest stuff. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
No, and that, I think actually we share that, Brian. We of the things that are like, and it's not all guys watching guy movies, but there's a certain thing of like, man, that hits hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. Lizzy, what's yours?
Katsumoto says right before they're about to go into battle, he says, "You believe a man can change his destiny?" And Algren says, "I think a man does what he can until his destiny is revealed." I thought that was very powerful, and I think it's so deeply relatable.
Yeah, that is good. And I actually paid attention to that one on this walkthrough as well. In one of Nathan Algren's voiceover diary readings, we mentioned it. They are an intriguing people. From the moment they wake, they devote themselves to the perfection of whatever they pursue. And it's how it ends that matters. He goes, "I have never seen such discipline." And I think when it comes to personal discipline, morality, there's so much you can't control in your life, dear listener. And to think about a movie like this, its beauty, its fight scenes, a little bit of comedy, its emotional peaks, to get lessons from it. What a wonderful thing that movies can give us. And let's move on to how we rate this movie. Brian, I'm going to start with you. Listeners, as you know, we do 0.5 is our lowest, 5 is our highest. We do 5-star scale. Brian, how do you rate The Last Samurai?
I gave this movie 5 stars. I absolutely love this film. This is basically, I will watch it anytime it's on. If I can't figure out what I'm going to watch, this is what I end up landing on. This is a good, if not great, movie with good, if not great, rewatchability.
Well, as you know from what I said earlier, great rewatchability, and to hold it in such high esteem, and to know that there's others that don't, kind of digs at me sometimes.
Yeah. This is, well, like I said, to open this up, this is a movie I have been ready to defend in the court of public opinion for a really long time.
And here we are. Lizzy, what is your rating?
Yeah, I'm going to give this movie 5 stars too. I just don't see, there's nothing that I feel like I would change about this movie that's grand enough to really feel like it's a make or break component. But I really love how this movie just has so much depth. And I truly never anticipated that coming from this movie. I really didn't. And so I was just very pleasantly surprised. And I think I will rewatch this and I will recommend it. And I see this becoming kind of a comfort watch, actually. So this is one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is it opens up for me movies that like I would never watch. Like you give me the cover of this movie and I'm like, I'm good. But but forcing me to watch it really forces me to sit down and like realize how much there is to appreciate here. So I really loved it.
Did you come to understand why Aaron was so excited?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I figured in my mind when I saw this, I'm just like, it's just like a boy movie. Like, of course you're excited. You're just Tom Cruise being a warrior. And, but then eventually, yes, I fully got it and understood.
When he first brought this up as a possibility for a dealer's choice, I was like, well, yeah, we're totally going to do that. And this is back in June, which is when I believe we were initially supposed to record it. And, I think it was Russ or Chad or somebody who was like, oh, we just replace Frye on it. It's like, you will take it from my cold, dead fingers. I was like, I don't care if I have to record it in Ireland. You will take this from my cold, dead fingers.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm not doing this movie.
Yeah. If I didn't give it away, there was never any question. This is a 5-star movie for me. I think it absolutely deserves all of the positive things. We got to dive into so much tonight that this movie opened up for us things that are a little bit of a zag away from how any other modern movie might do it. And I always give a long response as to why I rate a movie what I rate it, but I think I'll take Nobutera's advice. Too many mind, just no mind. It's 5 stars. 5 stars all the way. There was never any question. Well, let's look into next week. I need some help figuring out what we are going to select for next time.
Yes. Okay. So next week, the theme is going to be dysfunctional marriages. So are we prepared for this? Are we going to buckle up? Option number 1, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf from 1966. A middle-aged New England associate professor and his wife, with the help of alcohol, use their young guests to fuel anguish and emotional pain towards each other over the course of a distressing night. Option number 2, Blue Sky from 1994. Carly moves with her military husband and their 2 daughters to an isolated army base, only to quickly become part of a cover-up involving a nuclear bomb test. Option number 3, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof from 1958. Brick is an alcoholic ex-football player who drinks his days away and resists the infections of his wife. A reunion with his terminal father jogs a host of memories and revelations for both father and son.
I'm going to have to go with our 60s decade option, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Yes.
All right. Well, both of you, it's a dealer's choice. We always love having all our hosts on. Thank you, Lizzy.
Yes, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you, Bryan.
Cheers.
And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contributions is much appreciated and will go toward making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Bryan?
You remind me of someone. A man I met in a half-remembered dream. A man possessed of some radical notions.